I had a null hypothesis stating that during steady-state exercise, heart rate will initially increase in comparison to rest and will plateau at around 3 minutes until exercise is completed, and will rapidly decrease post-exercise due to the presence of oxygen. There were 3 different devices that could be used to measure heart rate: the oximeter, heart rate monitor and watch, and blood pressure monitor. The main one used was the heart rate monitor and watch, although the other 2 were helpful if there was an anomaly or error with the heart rate monitor and watch. Heart rate readings were taken every 2 minutes as a way of measuring whether the athletes were working submaximally. The normative data for heart rate during steady-state exercise suggests that during the first 3 minutes there will be a steady incline of heart rate. But from then on it should plateau for the remainder of exercise. For the initial stage of steady-state exercise, both Max and Summers' data mirror the normative data, stating that heart rate will rise before exercise due to an anticipatory rise. However, Josh's data shows an initial decrease in heart rate due to the fact that his resting heart rate before the test was measured at 105 beats per minute. Having a resting heart rate of 105 beats per minute is extremely high and likely is not Josh's normal heart rate. We do not believe the reason to be because of an anticipatory rise, because it still would not have been this high. With 3 different methods of recording his heart rate, they all showed his heart rate to be near the same. Therefore, I believe the warm-up was completed at too high of an intensity, which is also shown as his heart rate decreased when starting the exercise, due to it being at a lower intensity than his warm-up. Josh's heart rate continues to increase during the exercise, which is because oxygen is needed at the working muscles prior to exercise due to his warm-up, which results in his heart not being able to work at steady state, and instead having to increase heart rate. Only Summers' heart rate shows a clear plateau. This plateau is due to an increase in heart rate, being able to supply oxygen to the working muscles. This also increases stroke volume, as both heart rate and stroke volume increases cardiac output. As both heart rate and stroke volume increases, cardiac output will decrease as a result of this. Summers' data shows a heart rate reading of 174 and 173 beats per minute between 6 minutes and completion of an exercise in 20 minutes, with changes being approximately 10 beats per minute. Both Max and Josh's data also show inconsistencies. There are parts during the exercise where it would decrease, increase and plateau, but not as shown by normative data. If we analyse Max after his first 4 minutes, instead of a clear plateau, there is a significant increase in heart rate from 108 beats per minute to 186 beats per minute. In 4 to 6 minutes of exercise, which then remains this way for 4 minutes. This is outside of his submaximal training zone and shows him to be working near 90% of his maximum heart rate. There are 2 occurrences that may have happened here. Either Max is working too hard or the data is being recorded incorrectly. This caused his heart rate to be sitting above his submaximal training zone. I believe the reason to be that Max was working too hard, as he also recorded his RPE as a 16, which is too high for steady state exercise, and instead should expect to see around 10 to 12. As once steady state is reached, the exercise is much more easy. At 11 minutes, Max was told to stop working at this intensity, which is shown as his heart rate decreases down to 170 beats per minute, which is in his submaximal training zone, and then plateaus for the remaining 9 minutes of exercise. During the exercise, vasodilation and vasoconstriction will occur to allow for more blood to be at the working muscles. For example, there will be vasoconstriction of organs that are not needed during the exercise, such as the digestive system, which will be moved to the working muscles to allow more blood flow and more oxygen, which then, in correlation to the graph, will allow for the plateau of heart rate, or makes the plateau easier. Venous return will plateau because there is a consistent amount of blood being pumped around the body, meaning there is also a sufficient amount of blood being returned to the heart. Respiratory system. I had a null hypothesis stating that breathing rate would initially increase as there is a higher demand for oxygen, until 3 minutes where steady state would have been reached and breathing rate would have started to plateau. When heart rate increases, breathing rate also increases, and towards the end, when exercise is finished, breathing rate will drop sharply. The way that this was recorded was by watching how many breaths through nose or mouth the participant takes per minute and recording it. We also observed the rise and fall of the participant's chest and shoulders per minute. Because of this, there was a high chance of human error, but data seems to be similar and is therefore less likely. Normative data shows that during aerobic exercise, breathing rate should increase from a resting breathing rate of 12 to 5 breaths per minute to 30 to 40 breaths per minute. This is because of tidal volume, which also couldn't be measured, but looking at normative data we can see that the breathing rate times tidal volume, minute ventilation, because the average minute ventilation is 6 litres per minute and the average tidal volume is 0.5 litres per minute. We can divide the two to get an average breathing rate of 12 breaths per minute. Prior to exercise, there will be a slight increase in breathing rate due to a stimulation of the nerve sending a message to the Respiratory Control Center, or RCC, which is then sent to the dorsal respiratory group, DRG, which sends an impulse down the intercostal nerve, causing the intercostal muscles and diaphragm to contract and oxygen to fill the lungs. This is also known as the anticipatory rise, and inhalation of oxygen. Summers' data shows an anticipatory rise, but as other clients did not record breathing rate prior to exercise, we do not know if Max and Josh experienced the same. From 2 to 4 minutes, all participants experience an increase in breathing rate. Max is an increase of 40 to 44, Summers increases from 16 to 24, and Josh's increases from 26 to 34. This is due to an increased demand for oxygen as exercise begins, which causes breathing rate to increase as the body needs more oxygen to supply to the working muscles. Chemoreceptors detect a higher level of acidity in the blood due to the increased amount of carbon dioxide because of diffusion rate. As a result of this, the intercostal muscles and diaphragm both contract and expand to allow for more oxygen to fill the lungs. Breathing rate will continue to increase as there is a higher demand for oxygen until steady state is reached. Inside the lungs, the pressure outside of the lungs increases and inside the lung decreases as air moves from a high partial pressure to a low partial pressure, also increasing breathing rate. Breathing rate will start to plateau once a sufficient amount of oxygen has been found by the body. This is detected by the chemoreceptors towards the RCC, and the RCC tells the brain that it no longer needs the amount of oxygen it needed before, as a plateau has occurred. This occurs the participants are now working aerobically. The graph shows that post-exercise there is a decrease in breathing rate. Both Josh and Thomas' data shows a slight increase at the beginning and after starts to plateau at 4 minutes. It then shows a slight decrease at about 20 minutes, which is due to the exercise having stopped and no longer having to work at a higher intensity. Josh's results have a small anomaly as his breathing rate increases quickly and then drops at 5 to 6 minutes. It then starts to rise again, most likely because between this minute Josh was consciously thinking about his breathing rate, which may have caused his breathing rate to decrease. Energy systems. I again had a null hypothesis that the client would use the anaerobic energy system to start off with and move into the aerobic energy system, because the client was exercising at a moderate intensity for a long period of time and would therefore need oxygen to supply to the working muscles. The method used were recording blood lactate every 6 minutes using a small drop of the sample's blood and placing it onto a blood lactate analyzer. O2 saturation every 4 minutes using an oximeter, which goes on the finger and will measure O2 saturation levels. Normative data would show that O2 saturation levels will decrease slightly as the client is working aerobically, but still for a long period of time. Therefore, there are still slight decreases. Normative data also states that for some people, O2 saturation levels do not change with exercise, although this does not occur in any of our clients' results. Both Summer and Max have an increase in lactate levels at 2 minutes into the exercise, Max by 16.2 and Summer by 12.4. This is because they are both working using the anaerobic energy system due to not having enough oxygen in the working muscles. This also shows as lactic acid is a byproduct of the anaerobic energy system, and lactate levels are increasing. Summer and Max's lactates do not decrease until 4 minutes, suggesting that the clients are working at a higher intensity than they should have been to be at steady state, meaning the plateau took longer to occur, as normative data shows that it should take around 3 minutes and no more. Josh's lactate levels increased by 0.5% and is closer to normative data, although it's not quite right, as normative data states that blood lactate should decrease slightly to be working aerobically. Summer and Josh's O2 saturation data showed a clear plateau, whereas Max's data showed an anomaly because of how low his O2 saturation was. This may be because he was not constantly working at the same pace, and therefore his results fluctuate just as his intensities did, although it is also likely that the data was recorded incorrectly, as data states that O2 saturation was under 85%. This indicates that he would have severe hypoxia, which Max does not have, as he was able to complete this exercise. I predicted heart rate would initially increase before a plateau at around 3 to 4 minutes and will fall rapidly after exercise had finished. My hypothesis was incorrect, as the heart rate for clients took a longer time to decrease and Josh's heart rate rose throughout the exercise. Respiratory system hypothesis. I predicted breathing rate would increase initially and plateau at around 3 to 4 minutes. I also predicted there would be a rapid drop of heart rate when exercise is finished. I believe my hypothesis was incorrect, as the breathing rate took a longer time for the clients to plateau. Also, there was not a clear plateau in all participants. And finally, energy system hypothesis. I predicted participants would mainly use the anaerobic energy system because the client was exercising at a moderate intensity for a long period of time. My hypothesis was incorrect, as lactate levels were higher than wanted for most participants, showing that they were using a different energy system to the one hypothesized.